Bob Stewart was born into the life of hot rodding in 1934. He's the son of Ed and Tilly Stewart and grew up in San Diego, California. His father, Ed, nicknamed Axel, was by training a machinist and heat treat specialist. He later became a committed hot rod builder and racer. In the late 30s, Ed started caravanning out to Muroc in the Mojave Desert to run cars through the time traps on the dry lake. Ed got involved with the Southern California Timing Association, the SCTA, and in 1941 became a founding member of the San Diego Roadster Club, along with Johnny Vesco, Bozzie Willis, and J. Otto Crocker. The LA Roadsters Club wasn't formed until 16 years later in 1957. While Bob Stewart was in his early teens, his father Ed started up a speed shop called Stewart Speed Automotive in their garage in Suncrest, about 30 miles from San Diego. Ed collaborated with Abe Kobeck at Rogers Auto Carriage to learn how to make Ford dropped axles by the drop hammer method, which made them tougher than taffy-pulled axles. The modified axle lowered the stance of the desert racers for less wind resistance and faster times, and it became a signature hot rod part known as the Dago axle after the locale of San Diego. How'd you get into this life, Bob?
I got into it, I was kind of born into it. My dad was very active in hot rods, and even while he was still working during the war.
I want to hear about what happened at El Mirage when you were 11 years old.
Well, basically, younger than that, I used to sit on the frame of the Roadster, and I learned the gears and pushed the clutch, and I never rolled it in, never went anywhere, but my dad was out warming it up. He was going to make a run, and he said, he stopped. He just stopped. He says, okay. He got out, came around, said, it's your turn. So after about 2 jackrabbit starts, that was it. I was on my way.
So what speed did they clock you at that day?
About 98. That was the first part of the season. Each year the Roadster, I'm speaking mostly of the Roadster itself, ran better and better and better. There was usually 6 to 8 lakes meets a year. Went on a point system, and the first 100 cars that were high-end points, the first 100 points, you earned your number for the next year. And that Roadster, even though it was a big bulky car, by 1949 it had gone 138, which for a high-boy flathead powered Roadster was really good. It was. That
was when people were really reaching for 150, right?
Right. They. I was at the lakes when Stuart Hillborn broke 150. I was at the finish line when he went through, and it's no big deal now. But then you got to figure it was pioneering. These guys made up what they had to do.
So what was your first car, and did your dad help you build it?
Well, my dad was very instrumental in building it, in helping me. Early on, he would answer questions for me if I got in trouble, but he made it damn straight that I had to figure it out. And you got to realize at that time I started my first 32 Victoria, I was only 13 years old, and so it was an experience that I truly loved, and been doing it ever since.
I understand you were in a car club in San Diego.
Yeah, the first club I was in was the Prowlers. Prowlers had originated out of Hoover High School in 1947. I was associated with them, but my car wasn't finished and I was still young. But at the age of 15, I had it finished and I'd run it at the lakes and turned 127 with it. And then but I was not 21, and I needed to get a signature from my mom. And I had, she lived in Bellflower. I went up to Bellflower one night to get a petition from her so that I could drive. We kind of got in an argument. I got mad. I went to bed. And I got up the next morning and walked in the kitchen, and my mom shoved this paper over to me and said, "This is signed." I said, "Well, what changed your mind?" And she says, "Well, didn't you feel that earthquake?" And I said, "No, I didn't. It was the day that Tehachapi fell in upper high desert. And my bed had gone all the way into the center of the room. I never felt a thing." So she says, "If you could sleep through something like that, why the hell should I not let you drive?" So that was the end of that.
So the Prowlers were about getting the right to go run at the lakes, and but were there any girls around?
Oh yeah, that was kind of the purpose of your car too. Your first impression, the first thing you wanted to do was run at the lakes. I mean, that was the ultimate goal. And yeah, you kind of went cruising for young ladies, and the car was it was kind of the crutch that would help you. You thought it was going to help you score, but it was never had much money. You were spending all your money on the car.
During World War II, Ed and his friends were making their runs on the dry lake of El Mirage, and Ed raced his '29 Ford Model A with a V8 flathead. Then he started building a 32 highboy with a low-stance Dago axle. In 1945, young Bob, only 11 years old, turned a 98 mile-per-hour time in the deuce at El Mirage. That same car would later become the famous Stewart Roadster in the 1990s, owned by the Stewart family for 63 years. Back in the early 50s, the father-son Stewart Speed Shop moved to San Diego proper. Young Bob became expert at boring, honing, cord and polish work, and he also made deliveries of the Dago axle and other speed parts to LA. His customers nicknamed him Little Axle after his well-known father. Bob Stewart has 3 kids, Cindy Lou, 53, Bob Jr., 52, and Ed, 45. Bob Jr. is a hot rodder too, and he and his dad finished the Stewart Roadster in 1989. Bob's life history and that car were featured in the October '97 issue of American Rodder magazine. The Stewart Roadster was sold in 2006 to a private museum in South San Francisco. It's in good company there, with 17 Dearborn cars and some Barris Customs. You know some other racers. Can you tell me something about some of them, maybe Bob McCoy?
Yeah, I've known Bobby since he was about 12. He used to come around the shop. Now, I'm only about 4 years older than him, but he just loved cars. He loved racing, and he was doing artistic things when he was just a teenager. Again, during the early 50s, most of the Indy racers, the guys that ran at Indianapolis, really came out of California. Over half the field in '56 was from California. And these guys were much different in their styles than racing had been up to that time.
You say the West Coast style of racing, driving, approach to cars was different from the East Coast, but how would you describe the difference between a California racer and somebody from Texas like Johnny Rutherford?
Well, he was a sprint car midgets, things of that nature. The guys out here, the hot rodding was placed more on the emphasis of street racing and lakes and drags. And it seems that California has a tendency to come out first with ideas and new things. They I don't know, why that is. The East then copies a lot of it. Now a lot of stuff, original stuff, is coming out of the East.
Bob, I think you have a big helper in your wife, Kathy. What does she do for you?
Everything she can. She takes real good care of me. We've been together for 37 years. She knows nothing about cars, but she really encourages me. The Roadster came about finally after 30-some years because she said, you got to do it. So she backed me on it all the way.
These days, Bob lives in Grants Pass, Oregon, with his smart and energetic wife, Kathy, his #1 supporter, and his 2 cool cats, Mercury and Michelle. Their house and garage is like a mini hot rod museum. Their prize street rod, a collaborative project with son Bob Jr., is a 50 Merc. At the invitation of Mark Ricketts, who sports an original Dago axle on his own hot rod, Bob Little Axle appeared in February 2012 at the Detroit Autorama to share his life story. A book project on Bob's life, racing on the dry lakes in the 1940s and 50s, and the Dago axle is in the works. Bob, how old are you now?
77.
77, and what's next on your list of things to do?
Staying in a vertical position. The desire would be to take my Merc, my wife, and not the cats, and go cross country. Take a 1-month tour. I just love driving a hot rod when you're traveling because it breaks the ice for lots of things.
Hey Bob, has anybody ever mentioned that you look like Billy F. Gibbons of ZZ Top?
I've had it happen. I think the only associate is the fact that I've got a beard, and he's about a foot shorter than I am. He's a nice person. He's really into the hot rods. I don't know anything about his music, so I couldn't even tell you what song he had. But as a person to be around and enjoy, he's a good guy.